Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I have a special guest today, Richard Hagen, going to be from Immersive Publishing. He's going to be talking all about publishing, self-publishing, writing a book, becoming a thought leader, influencer, author, um, content creator. He's got an interesting story, and I'm happy to welcome him to the show. Richard, welcome.
It is absolutely lovely to be with you, and thanks for the opportunity to meet your audience as well. It's a real
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah. I know you're in UK, and kind of appreciate you staying up. Talk about your story and how you got to do what you do.
Okay, so I'll give you the potted version because I know you're a very focused podcast. So yeah, I live just outside Glasgow now in Scotland, and I'm from the west of Scotland originally. And I run a publishing company now, books and online courses, and that's not something I ever thought I would be doing when I was growing up. I After university, I joined a Catholic religious order like the Franciscans or the Jesuits, not as famous as the Franciscans and not as smart as the Jesuits. That the order that I was part of, it was an order of preachers and teachers and storytellers. So I worked all around the country, the UK, a little bit of work in the US on Long Island and a couple of different places, a little bit down in South Africa. And that's where I started to get involved in the world of publishing. The community I was part of ran the biggest Catholic publishing company or publishing house in the UK. So I started writing short pieces for them and then larger, more complex bits to kind of book length projects. And that's where I kind of got a real taste for the power of publishing to reach many, many more people than you could do when you're standing in front of an audience or working one to one with people. Um, and I loved my work, working in communities, but I had to kind of withdraw from that life because personally, the the kind of atmosphere of the organization and the community I was in was quite harmful for me. And despite all my attempts to kind of change the structure, I wasn't going to win that battle. So I withdrew from that and then simultaneously set up my publishing business with the co-founder of my business, Martin Pentecost, and retrained as a primary school teacher at the same time. So I've got all of that church, preaching, teaching, weird eclectic background, throw in some NLP and hypnotherapy training along the way. And now I help business people create transformation for the readers and their students for online courses. And it's like bringing all of the stuff that I've worked on over the years together. I've got the same mission, but a very different context. Now it's my own business, and I help empower business people, authors, to transform the lives of the people that they want to touch and to reach.
Yeah, I love this idea about scaling and just reaching millions of people with 24/7, especially with a book on Amazon. Reach it's kind of like a 24/7 store. Talk about you get 5 million books a year get published, and it says stop fantasizing and get a strategy before you write yours.
Yeah, I think I don't know what it's like in the States. I think it's very similar. Certainly here in the UK, there's a whole thrust in the entrepreneurial community among certain presenters that you should write a book. You've got to have a book, become the go-to expert, become the premium paid expert, all of that stuff. And there's clearly there's an element of truth to it, but it's all sold very simply. So all you need to do is what are your top 10 ideas? There's your top 10 chapter titles. Then subdivide that. And all of that is done around the information, the stuff you know. But when you work one to one with people or with clients or patients or whoever you're working with, it's not the stuff you know that counts. It's your ability to create transformation and results for them that counts. And most people, when they sit down to write a book, because it's the first time they've done it, and I understand it, they kind of go to their comfort space, which is the stuff I know, not how do I help someone in a book or an online course to be changed as powerfully as if they were working with me one-to-one in the room. And that I think is your starting point for your strategy, is to recognize that the behind your strategy for a book is not the stuff you know, but the change that you can create for the reader. And that takes more work in a book and more planning. So that's your underlying, that would be my recommendation, to put your book on the strongest foundation, is focus on the value you're creating for the reader before you focus on what you want to get out of it. And I know that's a kind of contrary perspective in the market, but it's kind of obvious. You're not going to buy from somebody who just knows stuff. You're going to buy into somebody who can change your life. And that's really the starting point of the strategy for a really powerful book or online course or product business. So yeah, otherwise you're one in those 5 million books, and you'll be like most of those 5 million books, which is full of bullet points, full of data, and deadly dull.
Yeah, I
And
love
that's
that.
the bit. That's the bit we don't want to hear, unfortunately, because it's much easier to sell. Oh, just get your chapter titles down, and the world's your oyster. No, there's real craft and real work here, and your readers will love you for doing that work of authoring.
Yeah, interesting. So, you know, one thing is talking about you talk about no one cares about you or your story. Everybody cares about only themselves. What's in it for them? What's in it for you? Make sure, and you talk about make sure you write your book to change the reader's story.
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating space. I'm in an organization here in the UK called the Professional Speaking Association. So I speak at business events and networking and seminars. And there's a whole, and I know it's a very big movement in the US and the speaking circuit. There's kind of people's stories, whether they've climbed Kilimanjaro or Everest or they've sailed across the ocean, and people will do entire talks around their experience, their story. And it's all from I think a practical business experience or audience member experience. It can be really interesting, but of what value is it to me? In some ways, the more you tell stories of real people being transformed, and you can connect with real people's experience, not exceptional circumstances, the bigger impact your book will have. And it's the difference between anecdotes and stories. Most of us say story when we think anecdote. So classic would be a speaker stands up and says, I met so and so, and they said this to me, and I told them to do this, and they had this massive transformation, and ta-da, excellent. That's not a story, that's an anecdote. It tells you about things that happened in the past, and it's very flat, it's not emotional, it doesn't get you engaged. A story doesn't tell you about the past. A story helps you navigate, cope with, and create the future that you want. That's why we were brought up on fairy tales, fairy stories. They're not about the past. They're about, as a child, how do you navigate this world with its dangers and its challenges and its opportunities and its risks and the amazing people in it and the child, all of that. Story is for the future. It's not talking about the past. And most or many business books, it's all I did, I think, nobody cares.
Yeah,
My story, how do I change my story? How can you help me create a better future? How can your insights and your tools transform me? That's the real story of the book. But most business people start at that very first layer of anecdotage rather than transformation.
yeah. What's interesting is I love this idea because right now everybody needs a personal brand, whether you like it or not. And you talk about this idea is every business is a publisher. Um, Along those lines, every business is a marketer, and and you talk about one thing you should have in place before you write your book or you know, uh, create your brand.
One thing. I think, ironically, again, it's not about you. I'd say, who are you for? Who are you for? And what are you going to do for them? Because that's the heart of your brand experience. Brand isn't your logo or your image or your color scheme. Your brand is that experience that people talk about when they've met you, either through a book or a course or live in person. That's your brand. More, it's amazing how many people put more effort into their visuals and into their copy or their writing than they do into really identifying, who am I for? Who do I create the most value for? And how do I shape that experience? And that, I think, for me, that's what then that becomes part of a story selling journey. You're not selling anything to anybody. People are buying in to that experience of value that you consistently present and portray and share, and you share it generously, and which again is the kind of opposite from that kind of taking vision of a brand. I'm going to do this to get. Your brand can be an engine for value delivery that then people want more of it, rather than a promise of future value that they never really quite get. So yeah, I think focus on who you're for and what you do for them and why they should come to you
Yeah,
before you worry about logos and color schemes and all the rest of that stuff.
yeah, interesting. Um, as we're kind of halfway through, and then we'll talk about kind of like the nuts and bolts and mechanics. But
Yeah.
one thing is you talk about is stop kidding yourself. You won't do the work to become a leader in your field. What do you mean by that?
Okay, you're right. Okay, you're going to all my big ranty things today. So I think it's that sense is that there's a language of thought leadership. It's a very prevalent thing in the whole business world, and I kind of, but when I see, and I even see people call themselves thought leaders. Now that might be a very British thing or a Scottish thing, but it's like, who the heck describes themselves as a thought leader? Why not reveal yourself as somebody who thinks more deeply? You don't. If you have to tell people you're a thought leader, there's something not quite working. It's the results that you create that should be changing it. I think a lot of the time, when thought leadership, or that it's superficial thought. It's not deep. It's not reflected on. It's not mind. It's just kind of scraped off the surface of our lives and our experience. And real leadership, whether it's in business or in communities, they're the people who present a vision which is radically different from the current reality, and they are able to empower a group of people to move towards that vision effectively. That's leadership. It's not about thought, it's about deep thought, and it's then about being able to inspire and energize and motivate and equip the people who want that change to make it happen, whether it's personally in their community or in the business. So yeah, and despite what most people say about wanting to be a leader in their field, simultaneously they don't want to say anything that's going to rock the boat. They don't want to go away for a week just to think at a much deeper level than most of their peers are doing. They don't, in the UK, we have this thing called Marmite, which is a paste that you spread on your butter or on your toast or on your bread. And people literally love it or hate it. There is no middle ground. And most people who in business who want to be a leader don't want to be a Marmite. And there is an essential element. If you're going to lead a group of people, you're going to have to have people who love what you do. And the consequence of the polarity of that is there'll be some people who don't buy in, but that they're not your audience. So that's all of the, and the other thing is People want to write a book that will catapult them into leadership without becoming a good author. They want to write like they write emails or write like they do a case study. But when you've got this chance to have you could have someone with your book for 7 hours where your voice, your words become their own voice in their head. They speak your words as themselves inside their heads. That's more power than any speaker or TV show or film ever has. It's magic. But most people will just write stuff. They won't do that work to literally be in the head and speak as if they are the reader themselves.
Yeah. So what should people do? Should they self-publish, or should they go with the tradition? I actually haven't heard of anybody going through traditional publishers unless you're like Michael Lewis, big time authors.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
There, there's the whole publishing landscape is incredibly varied. It's really dynamic and it's really changing. And so many of the expectations that people have around what a big traditional publisher is and does, and what self-publishing involves, it it's all very muddy and confused. And I think the key things to think about is it's almost like you need to figure out where you are in a couple of spectrums. Where are you in terms of control and collaboration? So that's one factor. If you're somebody who likes to control everything and to manage everything yourself and it to be done your way, and you have all the skills that you need, then self-publishing is the way to go. You will make much more money from self-publishing than any other publishing route. But then you have to go, well, but where am I on the spectrum of skills? Editorial, can I read my text as if I'm seeing it for the first time? Can I edit it? Or am I going to set up a team of people who'll be my editor, my designer, my marketing advisor, all of these things? All of those questions determine whether you should go for self-publishing, whether you go and kind of try and sell yourself to traditional publishers, or you work with a partner publisher. We have a traditional publishing side to the business, which is around gender, race, orientation, social justice. So we invest in those projects. And for all of the business projects, we become a partner publisher where people pay us to publish their work, but you get a full creative team working on your side and we manage everything. So there is no one publishing solution. There's the one that you need to find out about. And most people make decisions to self-publish or go to a traditional publisher without understanding the basics of the publishing industry, how the money works, how the numbers work. And the fact is, even the big publishers are not going to market your book. You, as the author, have to become the best seller of your book if you want the book to be a bestseller. Doesn't matter, unless you're already a famous name, you have to be the bestseller of your book. So that has to be built into your strategy and decision making way of publishing. So there's a whole learning journey there to go on, which we can't do in 2 minutes on the course. But it's a fascinating one. But think about what you're super skilled, super confident in, and whether you're better in a team with people who've got the skills you don't, who can enhance all your work, or whether you prefer the control of self-publishing.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting question. Is I know a lot of people, they had successful courses, especially during COVID, and these were expensive courses. And then I was looking, I was kind of doing research and reading it. It was like kind of only 6% of people that purchase online courses now actually finish them. So
Yeah.
having a book or a course launch, because now, I mean, now we have podcasts and audio books. So
Yeah.
kind of talk about that transition.
It's a really interesting point you make. That's not a new fact. To be honest, I mean, I about 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing some research on the quality and the success factors around online courses, and the numbers were appalling. I think so. A successful course was deemed to be 13% completion. I mean,
Yeah.
87. That was 5 or 6 years ago. Now it's a lot lower than that, but because most of them are just dreadfully dull. It's monologuing, like Amy, we're chatting together, but
Yeah.
it's a talking head video with a rubbish PDF infographic, and it's all there's no focus on emotional connection, on really generating at the beginning of a project, an online course, or in books. Why should this person really invest time and energy in this? The buying process, the way most courses are sold, pressing the buy button makes people feel better. And that's the result they get from the course. It doesn't change anything. What you want is, that's great. You want that satisfaction when you bought it, but then you want, when they do click on, to be so captivated by the power of what you're saying, the tools that you're presenting, and the story that underlies it, to lift it above that data dump and the bullet point lists and the tick box micro learning thing, that you're literally changing results. So I think most people have opted for a minimum viable product that gets almost zero results for people, and that's fatal for the percentage success rate with a course. Create something high quality, and you can refine it and test it and develop it, but focus on the value of the experience, and then that will improve the success rates, the results of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Just the way people are consuming media now. There's so many different options. You know, whether people love the touch of a physical book, or if they like a screen like a Kindle, or if they like it in audio. A lot of times you can get tidbits in YouTube, and I even know people claim to get their education from Instagram and TikTok. Not that I
Yeah.
would recommend that, but that's how people are consuming their information now. Um, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, go ahead. I know you have
No,
stuff.
it is really interesting, and I am torn. I don't have a magic solution to this. I think there are probably, at least, there's lots of things going on simultaneously, but there's the illusion of learning, which is hearing something and intellectually noticing it, and that's learning level number one. And it's like, yes, I know about that. Okay. And then there's deep learning, which is integrating it and applying it. So, and whereas I think shallow learning number one is ideal on social media, because it's an equivalent of another dopamine hit. That's interesting. I know that now. 4 minutes later, you've forgotten it. 4 hours later, you can't even really describe it, but you've certainly not done anything with it. Whereas the and yet it can be a gateway to that book or that proper course that's going to deliver the real change. But it's really about, what do people do with it? That's learning. It's not knowing about it or hearing it. What do they do with it? That's the real learning journey. And again, because most people obsess about the information layer, it's why most people don't get results from it. So yeah, it's you'll have guessed that we're focused on that transformation journey, not the dopamine hit of intellectual awareness or knowledge, because that is what creates leadership. It is an expression of leadership, actually, that someone has done the deep thought work to allow you safely to do the deep thought work yourself and take action. Whereas most people go, here's something interesting, do something with it. Yeah, I'm not going to be motivated by that. It's already kind of wishy-washy, as we'd say here.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, online courses. I mean, they're an interesting idea, and I think the best ones create like a community or engagement around it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's that
um,
mixture. I think even if you have a kind of almost automated online program or course, having an opportunity for connection, sharing, support, you can still manage that quite light touch, but that I mean the data says that supports better results as well. So yeah, that's definitely an element. Whereas most people are creating courses to almost put everything at hand's length, or hands off almost. Actually, you can still run those programs and be actively involved with it. It's still at a distance. It's not going to swallow your life up. But when you do share, you do contribute, you do respond to people, they experience the value of that interaction. But really, I know from running various programs over the years, my own background, the real value comes in the community supporting one another. That's where that really reinforces the learning in your programs.
How can people contact you, follow you, reach out to you, etc.?
So the key place to say hello and is on LinkedIn. So my name is Richard Hagen, Hagen, and if you're looking and you find a couple of UK ones, there's a famous Richard Hagen who runs an art gallery in England. That's not me. I'm Richard Hagen from Empower and Immersive Publishing, and we run coaching for potential authors, strategic work. We help people create intellectual property before they write their books and their online courses. And then again, as I say, we publish around the areas of gender, orientation, race, social justice, neurodiversity, with the people who have got a great story to tell, and it's not their business, but their story should be seen and heard by others. So yeah, that's me. LinkedIn key place, and you can visit immersive.pub, which is Immersive Publishing, or Empower Publishing. And that's MPOWR Publishing, because why would a publisher spell its name correctly?
Yeah, and for all the audience out there, let's thank Richard for coming onto the show and providing interesting information. And all of his resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
A pleasure. Thank you very much for having me today.